Okay, so my name is Patricia Reiff. I'm a professor at Rice University and at home. And I teach teachers. And so I offer teacher courses in the solar system and in astronomy and in space weather. And so if anybody is interested in taking any of my classes as an auditor or for credit, let me know. We do them on Monday nights, and we have remote participation. So I've been teaching via Zoom often, which is not to say I don't mess it up from time to time, but it does make it a little less painful for me to go all remote, like many of us are struggling to do right now. So I know this has been a tough time for everybody, but it's a great opportunity to learn some new tricks and to enjoy getting your skills up while you're not dealing in the trenches with people. Okay, so a lot of people are enjoying Stellarium, and Stellarium is an extremely helpful tool. We use it both in the planetarium and in my classroom in the flat screen mode. So today I'm having two trainings. This one for people who are using it more in fisheye or flat screen mode, and the one at 5 o'clock for ones that are using it more in mirror mode. The first thing you do, and let me share the screen. Oh, and by the way, Toshi mentioned that my link for the color Western was wrong. So I think fixed that. So if you tried to download the Western and you didn't succeed, try it again. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. And so now one thing that sometimes happens when you share the screen with Stellarium is it actually turns out to be on the second screen. And if that happens, I may have to connect up a projector. All right, so the first thing is, where do you download Stellarium? And I really strongly recommend their website, which is stellarium.org. Rather than getting it from me or anybody else, because you know it changes periodically. And right now the latest version is 0.19.3, which means technically, yeah, it's still beta, but you know, this is a piece of software that's been beta for decades. I'm not sure it'll ever have a version 1, but it is pretty stable, and it's really quite exciting. So I want to show you a couple of things on this page. The first thing is, you know, where do you download it? Okay, so if you download Linux, Mac, Windows 32-bit, which is mostly older computers, 62-bit is more of the newer ones, beta or ones that are still in progress. Generally, I wouldn't do that unless you, excuse me?
Yeah, the beta version, you have to be an expert, otherwise you will get into trouble.
Yeah. But there are some old versions, and sometimes if you've got a new computer or you have a very old computer that can't handle the new requirements, sometimes you have to back up and pull up an older version. So they are there and they are archived. You just kind of have to hunt for them a little bit. Okay, this is the user guide, and it's 100 pages long, but it's got a lot of activities, a lot of details, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it would take forever, but I am going to kind of go through the things that are on my cheat sheet. So I sent you all a link to my cheat sheet, which is one I pass out to my teachers because you can kind of print one page and keep it next to your laptop. And it'll be there when you go, oh my gosh, what's the key code for that? Because Stellarium has a lot of options that you can either use from the on-screen GUI, but also have keystrokes that are shortcuts. So that's why having a cheat sheet of the key codes is kind of helpful. Okay, so you download here, and when you do download, it'll ask you, you know, and I'm doing this PC because most everybody here wanted to do the PC, but the Mac is essentially the same, but if anybody has any issues. So you can save the file, or you can just run it. I generally have a tendency to save the file, and that way you can install it on another computer if you want. Okay, so then once you've downloaded it, and you can see its progress, it's fairly, you know, it's 252 megabytes, so I have a pretty speedy connection here. Now, the first thing you do before you install it is, the question is, do you have an old version already? And if you have an old version already, you might want to save out some features that you had in your old version so you don't have to reinstall them again, okay? So here are the two downloads. This is the one I did earlier this morning. Here's the one I just did now. And the question is, when you install it, where does it go? Okay, so how most programs do nowadays is the application itself is in your programs file folder, okay, on a Windows machine, or its applications if you're on a Mac. So the program itself is there where it's relatively safe. You have to have an administrator to mess with it, okay? Whereas the settings are off in a user folder so that the user can customize it for their own use, and you're not changing the main program. And what that means is, if you've got a laptop that has more than one user, then each user can have his own favorite configurations, and that can be very helpful. Okay, so on a PC, when you first try to install it, it's going to complain because it's not a Windows machine, not a Windows. So it may give you an argument like, you know, are you sure you really want to install a non-Microsoft verified app? And, you know, my view is, you know, you want to be careful. You don't want to just miscellaneous install apps on your laptop computer that might be harmful. So if it's not from the Microsoft Store, be sure you're very careful what you install. But Stellarium is a good one, so we'll go ahead and install it anyway. But, and again, do you really want to have an unknown publisher? I don't know if you're able to see this, but it's a user account control. Says, do you really want to allow this app for an unknown publisher to make your changes to your device? And so I have to say yes. All right. Now, one thing before you actually continue the installation, you might want to go into your PC and find your existing Stellarium, which would be in OSC Program Files. See, here's the Stellarium that I installed this morning, and here's a Stellarium that I installed previously. So I can just rename this Stellarium Morning. You know, and so anything that I might have in there that I want to save, you know, it's there, and it won't be overwritten, because it will normally overwrite when it does the installation. So let's go, let's say, okay, let's use English. We're going to set it up. I accept the agreement, and it's going to go into Program Files Stellarium. Fine. Would you like a shortcut on the start menu? Sure. Would you like a desktop icon? You bet. And this just kind of goes over what it is, and you say install. And it really doesn't take long at all. Now, there are some things like extra star folders that you might want to bring down, and that's why sometimes it's nice not to throw away your old installation because you may have brought down some additional materials. So you might. The other option is you can install directly into your existing one and it'll just overwrite the parts that are new. Okay. All right. So now we're done. So it's installed. And so now here's the new Stellarium, okay? And it's got a lot of stuff in it. All right. And one of the things that it has in it are data files. And this one that's called Sky Cultures, if you look at it and you click Western, it has all the previews of all the constellations that will be overlays when you run it, okay? Well, being someone who likes to play around with stuff on my own, I've downloaded, somebody shared, bless their heart, who I can't even remember now. So if you were the one who shared it, thank you. The color Western ones, and I gave you the link. So it is at http://space.rice.edu MST Astro 502. And so it just downloads this zip file so I can look at it and I can extract all. Where did extract all go? There we go, extract all. All right, so it's going to take that zip file that has the color versions of all of those. And so now here are all the color backgrounds. Okay. So what I normally then do here is go back to my Stellarium. And it's under Sky Cultures. So here are all the, excuse me? Oh, somebody is just talking. You know, I really get annoyed with, I'm fundamentally a Mac person, so I apologize when I get a little messy here. The thing I hate about PCs is you can have a folder open and then it just decides to go full screen on you, which I find, like now, which I find just really, really, really annoying. If I get it anywhere close to the corner, it decides to go full screen. All right, back to Stellarium, back to Sky Cultures, back to Western, and I go here and I do Control A and Controls to select them all, Control C to copy them all, and Control V to paste them all. And replace the files, do this for all. All right, so now it has replaced all of the Western skies in Stellarium with the color versions. And that's really all the difficulty it took. Okay, now, when you first open up Stellarium, and you've opened it for the first time, and it'll give you what version it is. Okay, that's the right version. it will normally open it up in flat screen mode with a location in Guérin's, France. Okay. So that's what you're probably going to see. So the very first thing you want to do is to change the location of Stellarium to where you are. And you know, now can everybody see the Stellarium on my screen? Okay, good.
I lost the main screen of you because I wanted to look where I have and I left the main screen. So how do I get back to the main screen? Where is
go back to your Zoom. Go back to your Zoom app and say bring all to front.
Ah, okay. Zoom.
Sometimes Alt 4 changes the window that you're looking at.
Zoom.
I still see you.
No. Just go to the Zoom again.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing. You go to the Zoom app and tell it to bring all your windows to the front. Okay, so when you are in Stellarium, there are a bunch of GUIs on the left and a bunch of GUIs on the right, on the bottom. And these are shortcuts to change the configuration or to change the time, or and 90% of what you need is on one of these pop-outs, but 10% is not. So some things you find are a lot easier to change by actually editing the config file. Okay, so the first thing on the config is to change your location. So that's this top one, which has got this compass thing. So if I want to put myself in Berlin, you know, I just type in Berlin and it'll say, okay, here's the Berlin Observatory, here's Berlin, Germany, and boom, you know, I'm in Berlin. And then I can click here, use current location as default. So when I hit use current location as default, that means that the next time I start up Stellarium, it will know I live in Berlin, okay? But, and at Berlin, it's dark now. So let's go back to Houston. And I got two options in Houston, and I will save that as, now you can also go in directly with a latitude and longitude if you're someplace strange. You can also click on the map, but it's, of course, it's not very accurate. Northern hemisphere, North Pole, South Pole. But the best thing is to, so here's the Amundsen station. And, but the best thing is to either type it in from a city if it's in the group, or if it's not, then use your latitude and longitude and say save it as default. But if you put it in by latitude and longitude, then you can add it to the list. So you can name your location. So if you're someplace where it's not on the list, you can create a name for it. All right, so anytime you set something, you have to actually close that window or it does not go away. All right, so the next one is the date and time window. Usually it goes with your computer clock. But if you know something's coming like a total eclipse and you want to set it directly to the date of the total eclipse, you can do that here. And it's actually quite good at doing total solar eclipses. The only trick thing if you're doing a solar eclipse is be sure you don't have the moon on expand the moon. So you can tell it to expand the moon size to make the phases of the moon more clear. But then it makes, you know, eclipses wrong, okay? So you have to have the moon as its normal size if you really want to have an accurate solar eclipse. Sky viewing options, okay? So there's a lot of stuff in here. And a lot of things are sliders. So you can make fewer or more stars appear. So what I'm going to do first thing is, we have this pesky daytime, okay? So if I want to see the stars and it's still daytime, I can hit A, which turns off the atmosphere. Now, in a fisheye, you'll still have this foreground that is lit by the sun, okay? So one of the things I do, just because I really don't like those buildings in the way, is you can specify your own landscape, and it defaults to Guérin's, which again is France. But I like ocean because A, it's blue, so it's not annoying even in the daytime, and B, it's got a flat horizon, so there's no pesky buildings, right where you want to be. So that's what I use is ocean. But you can also, with a panorama camera, a fisheye camera, or by doing a panorama, you can create your own horizon. I've never gone to that much trouble, but you can. You can also put yourself on the surface of the moon, you can put yourself on Mars. All of the things are really fun, but you can put yourself in a forest, which is kind of like sometimes when I go camping, but I like the ocean because it's not annoying and it's out of the way. Okay, so moving back to sky. So this tells you how bright you want the Milky Way. Now, in a planetarium dome, my experience is the standard background Milky Way is not very bright in the dome. So I normally crank this puppy up. I might crank it up to 3 or 4. If you get it too bright, then sometimes when the planet is in the center of the Milky Way, it's hard to see. But in a planetarium dome, especially in the portables where your reflecting surface is not bright white, it's nice to crank up that, okay? You can crank up the zodiacal light. You can crank up the shooting stars. That's always fun to, if you're in a dome, is to crank up the number of shooting stars that go by. You can brighten the stars. You can increase the twinkle. And again, if you want to teach twinkle, it's nice that you have, twinkling showing up. And then this says how many labels. So if you scroll it down, you don't have any star labels. And if you scroll it up, you've got way too many, okay? So sometimes when when you're zooming in to find something dim, you might want to increase the labels, but just in general, you don't want to have that too high. Okay, then solar system objects, same idea. You can crank up more solar system labels, which now brings things like Ceres, Neptune, or fewer, okay? So that again is something you can play with. Scaling the moon, this is the one that I told you is great if you're going to do an thing on the phases of the moon. You might want to make that moon really big in the sky so you can see the phases, okay? But if you want to do eclipses, then you make sure that's off, okay? And deep space objects, same thing. You can crank up more labels, more hints. So if you're going to go do some deep space observing, and you can turn on the Messier numbers or whatnot. Markings, you can turn on and off the equatorial grid. You can also turn on and off the ecliptic grid, the ecliptic line, all sorts of different things you can turn on. So there's the ecliptic line. And you notice, look, there's the sun, Uranus, the moon, all of the planets are right on the ecliptic. Okay, landscape we just saw, star lore, we just did Western. But there are other ones, Ojibwe, you know, and you can also create your own. So if you want to use Egyptian constellations, you can use Egyptian constellation or Western constellations. All right. So let's go back to Western. And then surveys, you can bring in star surveys, deep sky surveys. I don't normally use those, but others might. Okay, now, the interesting thing is, once you get it tweaked just the way you like it, you go into configuration window and you say save view and save settings. That means the next time you come back to Stellarium, it will put you facing that same direction, that same amount of zoom, those same settings. So what it does, it's going to write all those settings that you just played with sliders, and make them into numbers and put it in a text file, which is called config.ini. And the interesting thing about config.ini is, you know, every time you run the program, it rewrites that file. But say you've got it just the way you like it, and you want to share that config.ini file with a friend, you can save that file out, email it to them, it's just a text file, and then they can put it in the proper place and it will show up correctly for them. And that is very, very helpful, because there are some things in the config.ini file that don't show up here, okay? Tools is an especially important one if you're going back and forth between a mirror, for example. All you do is toggle here. You can run scripts, and there's some great scripts. You can do plugins, and this plugin is the one that I promised that I would show you is the Solar System Editor. So go to plugins, go to Solar System Editor, see if that load at startup is checked. If it is, you're good. If it's not, you have to check it and restart it. All right. So now let's bring in Comet Atlas, and we do that via this Solar System Editor. So you say configure, and we want to configure the solar system. And then I'm going to import orbital elements. And then I'm going to look at comets. And I'm going to select a source from this list, MPC's list of observable comets. Get orbital elements. All right, so now here are all the cool ones. And look, they now have Atlas as a default, which they did not used to do. Oh no, I guess I brought that one down. That's why it's here. I had already done that one. But you search for C 2019 Y4. So there's tons of Comet Atlas, because Atlas is a sky survey. And so there's lots of Comet Atlases, but the Comet Atlas, the one that's brightening right now, is C 2019-4 Atlas. So if I hadn't done it already, you have to scroll down there. So here's comet, periodic comets. So like here is L3. No, that's not it. You want a Y. T4. I mean, the first time I just like an idiot started looking for Atlas, and you know, that ain't gonna do it. So it would be C 2019 Y4 Atlas, but I'd already gotten it, okay? But that's where you would find it in this C/2019 space Y4 Atlas, and you'd say add object. So now it goes and gets that orbital elements and it puts it into your system, okay? So now that we've imported that data, and that, I mean, that's true of minor planets if some are in there. Okay, so now I can go to my find, my search window, and I can say C 2019. Well, what? Y4 Atlas. You know, the one thing you should be able to just click on this, but if for some reason it doesn't, or maybe somebody can tell me why I'm doing that wrong. But you would think once it finds it, you should be able to just click on it and it would go there. All right, so boom. Now that's where Atlas is right now. Now it doesn't have a picture of it there for you, unfortunately, but it does have the right position. So that's what it looks like right now. And so, and when you want to center on the object, you hit the space bar and that puts it in the center, okay? And then to zoom in, you use the /up key, which is the one that's underneath the question mark, and it will zoom into that location. And this is where you might want to add more stars. So you'll have a little better finder view if you're really going to try to look at it on an actual telescope. And then to zoom back out, you use the other /down, the one that's underneath the pipe, which is above the enter. And that slash brings you back down and makes you go to your prime field of view. So you might, I don't know how you like to start off. Some people like to start off with south, facing south. That's nice because then over the course of the evening, you see things going from the east and setting in the south. Some people like to start out facing north. And I'm just using my mouse and dragging, okay? And when I use my mouse and drag, it can go up and down and over. So the safer way to do it is to use the left and right arrow keys, okay? But once you get it right where you like it, okay? Then again, you go back here to your configuration, main, save view, okay? So that says that's my favorite view is facing north. All right, and now here it is. So let's increase time. All right, so this is what it is right now in Houston, 2:36. To make time go forward, I hit the L key. So it's normally going for at real clock time, but that's kind of slow. So I'll hit L, and now it'll make time go a little faster. And each time I hit L, it'll make time go even faster. And about 3 is max. If you do 4, you'll really make the whole world dizzy. So here comes the sunset. And you'll notice that this comet is pretty well placed not far from the North Pole, okay? So K stops it. Now I might want to turn on altitude and azimuth, and that's this grid here. And that shows azimuth lines around here and altitude lines up there, and there's the North Pole, okay? Or I can turn that off and turn on the celestial coordinates. So you see it's not too far from the North Celestial Pole. Now, if you want to watch where it's going to be over the next few days, then to go 1 day forward, you hit the equal sign, jump, 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 jump. Then you see the moon marching across. So it still stays in the northern sky. Here's April 15th, April 20th. It's getting brighter and brighter. For us, I believe the maximum brightness is around the 20th to 25th of April, and then it starts getting a little close to the sun and going into the southern horizon. So forward 1 day is the equal sign, which is under the plus. So plus kind of tells you go forward a day. Back a day is the minus sign. Okay. But I can also press and hold the equal sign and it'll jump forward a day at a time. Okay. Now, if I want to get back to right now, you hit 8. Bing. 8 will bring you back to now. Now, unfortunately, it didn't bring you back to the evening, which is where we were, but it brings you back to right now. And that's really important. All right, now, as I said, there's lots of things here. You can turn on and off the constellation. You turn on and off the ground, which is nice if you want to see through the Earth to see something that's in the southern hemisphere. That's G. And you notice when you see it, see that letter that shows up, that says that the keystroke for turning on and off the ground is G. So I can either click here or I could hit the letter G. Cardinal points, Q, okay? So I can either hit here or I can hit Q. And most of these things are toggle on, toggle off. Ooh, I got way too many deep space objects. Atmosphere, I can hit the letter A or I can click it here. Deep sky objects, I can turn them off or on, okay? So this just turns them off or on. You specify in those sliders how many of them you want, okay? This turns on and off the planet labels. So we want to have planet labels, that's always useful. This switches between equatorial and azimuthal. They've got a lot of that. Center on the selected object. You can do that, or again, you just hit the space bar. Okay, night mode makes everything red in case you're using it outside, which I don't normally do. You can go non-full screen if you want to get off of full screen. Okay, so now let me show you, oh, and this is the most important one. Here's the help window. The question mark gives you all of those shortcuts. So like 1 day is an equals, is 1 solar day, but 1 sidereal day is alt equals. And 1 week is the rectangular bracket forward or the rectangular bracket backwards. You can pause or do scripts. Here's that set time to now. So as I said, a lot of them are on that cheat sheet that I gave you the link for. But here are all those key ones that are key. You turn on and off fog, turning on and off the ground, turning on and off the horizon. Okay, so those are the, now I forgot to show you. So let's see the constellation art, and that's R for art. And there they are in color, yay. But if you find the colors too annoying, you can always go back and do the grayscale. So it's always a good idea to save both folders someplace in your installers folder so that you can go back and forth between gray and color, depending on which one you want to use. All right, now, as I said, this is only some of the settings. So let's find out where the settings folder, the settings file is. Most important thing is, how do you quit Stellarium? Oh, by the way, there are some things up here, but that's if you're using Stellarium to push a telescope, which I don't. If you are, that's beyond my pay grade. We actually use a different program. We use the sky to move our telescope. So I don't use Stellarium to to do the telescope, but some do. All right, so most important thing, how do you quit? Control and Q. All right, so now I want to make some more little changes. All right, so to do that, I can actually physically edit that config file. Do you remember when I made it go on the celestial grid and it was really light green and it's very hard to see in a dome? So one of the first things I do when I want to try to make this better is I will edit those lines so they're brighter in the dome, okay? So you go to your own folder, your username. This is the username for this computer is called Discovery Dome because I use it in the Discovery Dome, okay? And you look at the main folders that are in your user folder, and there's one that's called desktop and there's one that's called drop downloads. But you notice this one's kind of grayed out. It's called app data, okay? And the reason it's grayed out is it's a hidden folder. They don't really want you to mess with it. But you know, I have a t-shirt that says I avoid warranties. So you need to go to to view hidden folders. And when you do that, then that shows up. Here's view, okay? And see this little check here, hidden items? If you first open up your home folder, that app data, oop, there it's gone. You see, it ain't there. So you have to hit that little check mark and show hidden folders. So there's where app data is. And so we click on app data and you say, well, where the heck is it? Well, guess what? It's in roaming. Don't ask me why it's in roaming, but it's in roaming. And there's our good friend Stellarium. There's config.ini, yay. Okay. So this is where I will, you notice I have config save.ini. When I get it really like I like it, I save a copy of it so that if I do another installation, it doesn't overwrite my existing config file and I can go back and restore it. But the nice thing is everything in here is editable and it's pretty straightforward. But with each iteration of Stellarium, there's more and more and more stuff in it. So you might have to drag down. So everything that's a toggle on and off is true false. Okay, so updates enabled, how often does it update? So here, how often it does the meteor showers. Here is font size. So this is the font size of meteor showers. There's several different font sizes. And if you're in a dome and your fonts seem too small, you can then go and you look at all these ones that say font and bump them up and make that font size a little bit bigger if it's too small for you in the dome. If, here again, satellites, it'll show you the satellites. Here is all the flags, whether you want to turn on the object trails or not. Some of these are in the GUIs and some of them are not. Some of them are in the configs and some of them are not. But all of them are here, so you can, so. Now, color, here we go. This is where I find that some of these are a little bit too dim. So I have already bumped up the ecliptic. So this is RGB. So it's 0.9 red, 0.6 green, and 0.2 blue, okay? So, but see this one, the equator color, I didn't bump that up, so I might make that 0.7. Okay. So anything that's a color of these lines, you want to make it so that the average, the value, if you take the square of each of those numbers, is close to 1, and then it'll be bright. But if you take the square of each of those numbers and it's less than a half, then it's going to be relatively dim. So if it's something that you want to be able to to point out, then you might want to increase the color brightness of each of those grid lines. Okay, so this is just anything you want, but there it is. That's how you do it. And you can specify what the base pixel size of your dome is. If it's a 1200 by 1200 or 1600 by 1600, if you set that here, then it will use the best quality images that it can. But as you
changes the resolution.
Yeah, let me see if I can, let me see if I can find it. It's not the resolution, it's the screen size. Now, one thing is, it's because it wants to have screen mirroring. So if you have a really high resolution projector, then you want to use a high resolution laptop. So when it mirrors, it gives the highest resolution out there. Let's see. They change the location of it from time to time. Baud rate, landscape.
So, but if I had a 4K projector,
Yep.
there's no PC or laptop that will have 4K.
Well, some of the Retina ones do have 4K. Okay. So you want to have a Retina laptop that has the higher resolution if you have a 4K projector, ideally.
So if I only have 1920 times 1080 pixels in my laptop, I cannot connect a 4K projector?
Oh, you can.
Okay.
You can, but I don't think it'll give you 4K across. You see what I'm saying? I think it'll make your existing pixels bigger, but I don't think it'll give you more pixels.
So the Stellarium is the limitation in this case then.
Okay, here we go. Screen height, screen width. So I have, 1080 and I have 1920, or sometimes it's 1200 by 1920. In fact, some of the better ones are 1200 by 1920, okay? So that's where it is. It's under video.
Okay.
So if what I would do if I were you, make these numbers the 4K numbers.
Okay.
And then if you're lucky, it should work right. In other words, you'll get a lower resolution on your laptop, but you'll have the full resolution on the projector.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, it would be really nice, and some people have done it, and I have not seen it successfully. So if anybody finds it, let me know. Being able to run Stellarium on a second screen. That would be so nice, because then you can put a 4K on your projector and you're not mirroring it, okay? But then the problem with that is because you're not mirroring it, you're not sure exactly what you're doing. The nice thing about having it mirrored is you're looking at your laptop and you're seeing exactly what they're seeing in the dome.
Okay.
But that's what I would do. I would crank this up as much as possible, as much as your projector is.
Okay.
But play around with it. Now, if you do that, you're going to want to increase the font size of the lettering to match. Because if you got 4,000 across, if you still only have 12-point font, it's going to be really, really small. Okay, so play around with the fonts to make it what you want. So there's a lot of things here for spheric. But anyway, wherever you get it, just save it. So, and close it. Now, the next time I open up Stellarium, it should remember those configurations. So that was at 253. And I actually like to have a, lost my ocean. Okay, so see how much brighter that blue is? Because I bumped it up a bit. It was so that you can almost barely see it. Now it's a lot brighter. And that's just from going into those color functions and making each of those RGBs a little bit bigger. And then you just get the whole thing just a little bit brighter and easier to see on the dome. Does that make sense? But there's a ton of things you can do with Stellarium. One of the, of course, the fun things to do is to, you know, come in on the moon and go a day at a time and go with the phases of the moon. And guess what? It's under the ground. That's when you hit the G. That's when G is really helpful so that you can continue to see the phases of the moon even though it's not visible where you are. Okay, so the phases of the moon are fun, but more important, again, slash down, slashes back out. The more fun one is the phases of Venus. So I zoom into Venus and, you know, I say, look, before I zoom in, I say, what's the brightest thing in the sky tonight? You know, and if anybody's been out in the evening, they know the brightest thing in the sky is Venus. I said, well, when the moon is brightest, it's full. What phase do you think Venus is now? And they'll probably say, you know, it's full. So we zoom into Venus and look, it's not full. It's not even half full. And what's really cool about Stellarium is that it gives the apparent size properly. So let's look back in the past. So I ask people, is it getting brighter? Is it getting fuller or less full? And again, they might guess one way or the other, okay? So let's go backwards in time and I'm gonna press and hold the minus key. And you go backwards in time and what you find is that when Venus is full, okay, and you can see the illumination 99.1 over here. When it's full, it's actually much, much dimmer and much, much farther. So the absolute wonderful thing about Stellarium is it's got all this information on the side. And so you can be the magician, you know, they ask you a question, oh, how far away is the Pleiades? And you can go, well, it's, you know. So its distance when it's full is 1.7 AU. So it's 1 AU from us to the sun, and then it's 0.7 on the far side of the sun, which why it looks so small. Okay. So let's go that, and that was back on September 11th. Okay, now let's go forward. Yeah. And you can watch the magnitude changing in the upper left, minus 4.3, minus 4.7. Look how big it is, okay? So again, I say to the students, is Venus really, really getting bigger? Now, why does it appear to be getting bigger? Is it actually getting bigger? No, it's getting closer. And so as it is the closest, okay, here's the distance over here, and 0.33 AU. So it's between us and the sun. So between 0.3 and 1.7 is over a factor, it's like a factor of 5, okay? So the apparent size of Venus changes tremendously as it goes between us and the sun and goes on the far side of the sun. So I really love to use this as a quick demonstration of how we can prove that Venus is not going around the Earth, it's going around the sun, because its distance changes so rapidly as it's changing phase. So that's just a really quick thing you can do, is you do the phases of the moon, which most students need to know, and then you wow them with the phases of Venus. And again, slash back gets you back to today. G turns back on the ground. Okay. And to select, you click. To unselect, you can right click or control click to unselect. So when you're looking at the constellations, you can have them only come up if you've got that one clicked or not, which is nice. All right. And the other thing I love to do is to show them, you know, the line of the ecliptic. Let's turn off the equatorial grid. Show them the line of the ecliptic and watch how the sun goes through the sky during the year. I'm going backwards, of course. So, and what you find is right about here that the sun is in the constellation of Ophiuchus. And so those people who really like to do astrology, if they happen to be born in early, you know, certain parts of December, they are actually in the constellation of Ophiuchus. So, and again, R toggles it off. I have the moon a little bright, but that's, you know, again, that's what you can do with adjusting that. Okay, any questions? Yeah, see, I got the Milky Way a little too bright. So let's go back to sky viewing options. Let's see. Where did I lose? So I don't want to scale the moon anymore. And I don't know where my, oh, here it is. Milky Way set brightness. Let's go down a little bit. Okay, so you see how it's dimming out based on, and that of course is the sun, which is right at that time of year, is right in the middle of the Milky Way. Okay, so go back to today, 8. And one of the cool things about Stellarium is that it's easy to export stuff to send out to a mailing list. So for example, the morning sky. Now to zoom in, I can also take my 2 fingers and go up and down on the trackpad. So pulling it toward me zooms in, pushing it away zooms out. Okay, and let's speed up time to the morning. Oh, a little faster. Scooch over. think I've got a little bit too you can also use the scroll function on your wheel on your mouse. Okay, so like here's what the sky looks like in the morning, right at dawn. So let's back up just a little bit. So right before dawn tomorrow morning, we have Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn all very much next to each other. Mercury has been better. It's getting worse. So if I go backwards a day, you'll see how it used to be better, but now it's getting worse. Okay. Now we see that Mars is walking between Jupiter and Saturn. So there's the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th. Okay, so what it shows is that Mars and Saturn will have a very close approach on the morning of the 30th, pre-dawn. And if you look the next day, even closer, the 31st and the 1st. So, you know, you might want to send out to your teacher network, be on the lookout for Mars passing Saturn and, you know, do a screen capture and send it out. So the neat thing about Stellarium is that you can export to a picture and then you can use that picture to do anything you want. You can also make scripts. So if you want to show the projection of the eclipse coming up in 2024, you can place yourself on the center line. You can actually create a script that shows the moon passing in front of the sun. I haven't done that yet. I probably will, but those are the kinds of things that are really help. And that doing scripts is kind of a second order thing, and where our hour is over now. So I'm going to stop and see if anybody has any questions.
How did you show the planets? I don't see it. I have now set to the 30th of March, and I have the ecliptic in my picture, but I don't see the planets. Okay.
Now, do you, at the bottom, you see that that little Saturn icon at the bottom? So you turn.
Okay.
So that one turns on and off the planet labels.
Oh, I have the planet labels on. Okay, but I don't see them.
You don't see and it's today, it's the 31st in the morning, the right day?
The 30th, oh, okay. I have to switch to the 31st with the plus or what? Plus,
yeah,
no.
plus goes one day forward, minus goes one day backwards.
Work, at the Mac, I don't know why.
Okay, well now, also remember, go into Sky and Viewing and solar system objects.
Okay, if I now 31 and in the early morning, then I see the planets.
You do see them?
4 o'clock in the morning, or?
Yeah, they should be the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning before dawn.
Date and time. What is 1st of April or the 31 of March?
Yeah, should be around 6 o'clock in the morning local time.
The time, where is the time has gone? Julian day, date and time. I only see the date. I don't see the time.
That should be down here at the bottom. See,
okay. Yes, you're right. 4:07.
Okay,
I have 4 o'clock, 7 minutes after.
Yeah, you gotta wait. You gotta go a little longer. The easiest thing is just to keep making time go forward until sun rises.
Okay. Yes, you are. Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, again.
So here's sunrise, and so there's sunrise, and I'm just gonna make it go backwards, which is the J key. So the more times you hit.
Okay, now I have the planets. Now I have them. Okay, that was a good idea. Okay.
So you need need to know not only what direction to look, but what day and what time of day. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Now, if I have the atmosphere on, you'll see how much harder it is to see, you know, when dawn is really breaking. Okay, so K stops it, L makes it go forward in time, and the more times you hit L, the faster it goes forward. K stops it, J makes it go backwards, and the more times you hit J, it goes faster. Okay, and there was some activities, just some basic Stellarium activities that I do with my class, and I sent you all a link to that. It just basically leads them through installing it, you know, making sure they know how to operate it. But the neat thing about Stellarium, because it's free, if you use it in the dome, then when they start to understand the three-dimensional, you know, sky, and then when they put it back on the flat screen, they still kind of remember that this is actually wrapped around them.
So is there a problem with the resolution with Stellarium, that the resolution is too low sometimes, especially at the constellations? If I show the pictures of these constellations, I sometimes have the impression that this is very, yeah, it's not so sharp also.
Well, it's not intended to be really sharp, because you want to see the stars through them. It's really to be a guide.
Okay.
You don't want them super bright.
Okay, yeah.
Because you want to say, okay, look, see, here's the scorpion and here's his tail. And as I toggle R on and off, then you can say, ah, see that. So there's his heart and there's his tail. And then there's also down here the constellation lines.
Yeah. So
if you just want to show the typical lines, okay, and then you can say, okay, here's the Scorpio, and you know, one of my favorites is the teapot. I like to roll it this way. Mm-hmm. So there's the teapot, and there's the base of the teapot, and the handle of the teapot, and the spout of the teapot. So there's the lid, and there's the spout, and the steam out of the teapot is the Milky Way. And you can show Leo as the backwards question mark, and here's the great square Pegasus, and I like to turn him right side up. So he's always galloping to the west, so his face is away from the east. And if you look at his hind legs, his hind leg is actually Andromeda, and that's where the Andromeda galaxy is. So you can do the constellation lines, and you can do the constellation art, and you can do the constellation name labels. Oh, and you can also do the constellation boxes, the boundaries. And see, this is another one that's really hard to see. It's red. Okay, I mean, I can just barely see it. And so that would be another one. I would go back into the config file, and I'd brighten up that red of the constellation boundaries if you want to actually be able to see it, because I find it almost invisible.
Yeah, it is not really.
But that's the nice thing about the config file. You can make it as, you know, as big as you want. You can actually also make it 2 pixels wide if you want to, but that's trickier.
Okay.
Okay. I haven't been checking did we have any questions in the chat window? No. Let's see. Will I be posting it online? Yeah, time adjusting plus or minus. Yeah. Okay, well, I am going to stop the recording, and I will post it. So anybody who wants to watch it again, and if anybody needs anything, feel free to ask. And if anybody would be interested in taking any of my classes, let me know. I have an e-teacher email list that I send out stuff to teachers. And then I also have one for planetarium educators. So if you want to get on either one of my my planetarium educators list or my teachers list, or you might want to be on both, because the teachers list you might share with teachers that work with you. So things in the sky or workshops or whatnot. Anyway, nice having you all with me, and I hope it was helpful to you.